right, welcome everybody to another episode of A Fresh Perspective with Jeff Charles, with your boy, your favorite conservatarian contrarian, Jeff Charles, where we prefer truth over narrative and principles over politics. I got another very exciting guest for you today. This is going to be a great conversation. I am looking forward to it. But before I get into everything, as usual, you know what I'm going to say. You know what I'm going to say. I need you to like, share, and subscribe. If you haven't already subscribed, you need to hit that subscribe button right now. That way you will be notified whenever I upload a new interview. Also, just want to also remind you that LibertyNation.com is a proud sponsor of A Fresh Perspective. Check out LibertyNation.com for all of your conservatarian news, original articles and analysis, videos, podcasts, Liberty Nation Radio, and their signature TV program, The Conservative Five, all on LibertyNation.com, where truth is making a comeback. Now, my next guest, you all know who she is. She's a celebrity. She's famous. I don't even know why she's doing my show, because she's out there everywhere, and I'm just little old me. But I want to give you the founder of Red Renaissance, congressional candidate from Baltimore, Miss Kimberly Klacik. What's going on, sister girl?
Hey, how are you? What's going on? Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on. I feel like I'm the one benefiting here. I mean, you're everybody, everywhere you go, everybody knows who you are, and you know, it's like you're like the Halle Berry of conservative politics.
I wish. You know, this is what happens. We can wear a red dress with red heels. See, Jeff, you can't do that. So that's how you're not here.
How dare you tell me I can't do that if I want to?
Oh, you're right.
Are you a biologist?
I'm not a biologist. You're right about that.
Okay. So I can wear a red dress and heels if I want to. I won't look any good in it. I won't enjoy it. I can do it, damn it, because this is 2022.
Yes,
and
you're right.
Andre Brown Jackson is going to be a SCOTUS.
Yes, you're right. I take it back.
So before we get into everything, and for the record, no, I'm not going to wear a red dress. No, I don't really care about that. I'm just, just for the people out there who are going to pretend to take that seriously. Anyway, why don't you, people pretty much know who you are, but why don't you tell everybody who you are, just for like the 1% of the population who doesn't already know?
Well, my name is Kim Klacik, and I ran for Congress in Congressional District number 7 in Maryland, and it encompasses Baltimore City, but also Baltimore County and Howard County, but a large part of it is Baltimore City. And I decided to run in a district where basically I was told Jesus Christ as a Republican cannot win it. But I said, you know what? If I'm going to do anything in inner cities across this country, I need to run in my own community of Baltimore and hopefully pave the way so that other people will think, you know what? Even though I'm a Republican, I can run in my urban city because we can make a difference. And so I knew it wasn't going to be a win overnight, Jeff. I knew it was going to take some time and chip away at it. But it was interesting because I got a lot of backlash for it. But you know what? In the Democrat Party, they don't get the backlash. They say, just keep going, right? If your name is Stacey Abrams or Beto O'Rourke, they want you to keep chipping away. When it comes to us Republicans, we better win at the spot. Like on the moment, you better win. Don't even bother chipping away at it. So I said, you know what? We're going to do things a little differently in 2020. We're going to chip away at it and see if we can win. For me, I know that in Baltimore City, we have a lot of corruption. There are a lot of people leveraging the urban struggle to line their own pockets. And you can see that from a mile away. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to do something about it. A lot of people are not fans of President Trump, but I was. Simply from the fact that he was a guy that said, you know what, I'm not a politician, but I know I can make a difference. And so that's kind of how I felt running for office myself. So, that's me. Before that, I ran a nonprofit doing workforce development for about 8 years in West Baltimore. Okay. But that's where my heart is. I'm a public servant.
Great. And we're going to talk about some of that backlash as far as unwinnable districts, because that's something that's bugged me for a while. So we'll talk about some of that too, because there are definitely reasons to keep running in those areas. And you are running again, right?
I will run again. Not this time around, but I will run again.
Yes. Okay, cool. So why don't you tell us a little bit? Well, actually, first, I want to talk about Red Renaissance. What is Red Renaissance, and what's that whole thing going on?
So Red Renaissance is my PAC. And so I know a lot of people start PACs as soon as they're done running for office. But for me and my team, it was very important because we saw kind of the, like you said, the backlash. And then we saw that we didn't get a whole lot of support from the RNC. Now, when you hear the RNC talk about, being a big tent party, really embracing minorities, that's a lot of talk and it sounds great. But at the end of the day, they don't actually do those things. And so for us, even though we raised $8.4 million in our campaign, and we did it within like 3 months, a lot of our money that we raised, we did do it through Win Red. And I don't think people realize, but when you raise money through Win Red, a big portion of it, a percentage of it, goes to the RNC. And so we would ask for help, we would ask for assistance, but you know what? I guess we didn't really fit the mold because we were running in a district that was D plus 30 and above. And so for the RNC, like I said, they don't want, to support people that are running in tough districts. But luckily, we had President Trump on our side who said, you know what? We're going to support you no matter what. We know it's going to take time. A lot of people told President Trump he could not be the nominee. He could not win the presidency. And he said, Kim, people told me every day, you're not going to do it. You're not going to beat it. And he said, and then I did. And he said, that's the kind of, tenacity that I need you to have running for your race. So I said, you know what? There's a lot of people in inner cities and, other areas, even rural areas across this country that are being overlooked by the RNC because they're not in that winnable district, as they call them. So we're supporting candidates that are not in those winnable districts that I know are great candidates. We have Billy Prempeh in New Jersey. Now everybody's looking at him because of redistricting. He's now in a district that is so-called winnable. We have Darius Mayfield. He's also in New Jersey. We have Carla Spalding. She's in Florida's District 23, right? And Sandy Smith. She's in North Carolina's 1st District. So we have about 23 candidates across the country that are in districts that are either, so-called winnable or unwinnable. But these are candidates that we feel are very good. A lot of them have not, they've run before. They're not first-time around candidates.
Right.
And believe it or not, Jeff, we have a lot of candidates that used to serve in the military. And those are the candidates that work the hardest. They're out there knocking doors. They don't care about grassroots style because they, they're hard workers. They understand what it takes. And so I wanted to support candidates that are doing just that. So we're trying to help by raise their profiles. Luckily, the one good thing I got out of my race is we still have our list, our donor list. So we ended up hitting over 100,000 donors. And then some of them are new, fresh donors that are looking for fresh faces to support. So we do rev share emails. We do fundraisers. Sometimes I travel across the country to do fundraisers for these candidates. And we're just trying to help raise money for them, raise their profile so that they can win in November.
Good, good. I mean, speaking of veterans, you got my boy Julian Aciard too. Can't forget him. Shout out to Julian Aciard. That's my guy.
Julian's in New Hampshire's 1st District. Yes, he is.
Yes. Yeah, I love that guy. That guy's passion is unparalleled. So,
yeah. Yes.
But I like what, because I mean, I'm seeing some other groups that are cropping up that see the need to support minority candidates. Yours is kind of taking more of a long-term focus, and we'll talk about that in a second. But you're right. I mean, the Republican Party has very short-term thinking. You're right. Beto O'Rourke was almost my senator after 2018. I was frightened. And he's going to lose for governor, but still, Democrats are not afraid to go into uncharted territory. So I like that. That's one of the reasons I like what you're doing. But before we get into all that, why did you get into politics in the first place? How did that happen?
Yeah, so it was kind of crazy. Like I said, I was doing my workforce development nonprofit in West Baltimore. I don't know if you remember the beef that the late Elijah Cummings, the congressman in Baltimore, had with President Trump. But yeah. So I took my camera and I was going around West Baltimore and I was just filming all of the illegal dumping, all of the trash, all of the craziness that was just kind of left on the streets of Baltimore. I started uploading these things to my Twitter account. So after a week or so, Fox News actually contacted me. And believe it or not, Jeff, they asked me where I was. They were like, "Are you in America?" And I said, "Yes, I'm in Baltimore."
Yeah. And
they were like, "Well, you gotta come on and explain what's going on." And so I did. I went on Fox and Friends, and it was a Saturday morning, and I said, "This is West Baltimore." this is what they're dealing with every day. I don't actually live in this particular neighborhood, but I actually did interviews with people in the neighborhood talking about the rat infestation, talking about the illegal dumping. And I said, and they're trying to get help from the city, but they don't. And I said, look, I don't have a ton of following. I got about 14,000 followers on Twitter, but I do know that some of the Baltimore officials do follow my account. So if I upload it, maybe they'll see it.
Right.
So, I did this interview on Fox News. Believe it or not, that morning, President Trump was actually watching Fox and Friends. So I'm driving home from the Fox studio, and all of a sudden my phone is like lighting up, and people are like, Kim, President Trump, he's tweeting about you right now. And I was like, really? And so I go on Twitter, and he's basically saying, thank goodness that people are shining a light on what's going on. We sent millions of dollars to Baltimore City, and to find out that they can't even pick up the trash, well, that's disappointing. And so he was literally retweeting some of the things he heard on the interviews, right? And people thought, apparently they thought he was being racist. They were attacking him. And here I am with my little account. I'm like, no, he's repeating everything that, the Black women said in my interviews. This isn't about racism. This is what people are living every day. And people didn't believe him. He went back and forth with the late Elijah Cummings. Unfortunately, Congressman Elijah Cummings, he passed away maybe 4 months after that. And then all of a sudden the seat was open and there was a special election. And so some people said, look, Cam, if you're going to walk the walk and talk the talk, you better get in there and try to fight. And so I threw my hat in the ring. The special election, I didn't do that well. But by the time we got to the general election, I was approached by the kids at Turning Point who said, let me help you with a campaign ad. And all of a sudden we have this campaign ad that went viral. Meanwhile, Jeff, I looked at it and I was like, who's going to watch this? It's me walking down the street. And they were like, no, it's great because you're telling the truth and people want to hear the truth right now. And so we launched the video. Somehow it went viral. And it just took off from there. And I said, you know what? I'm not a politician, but I want to help Baltimore City residents. So I'm just going to continue going in this direction.
So before that, were you planning to do anything else in politics, or were you kind of already on that trajectory, or were you like not even in that ballpark?
So I was on the Baltimore County Central Committee. So I would go out and knock doors for certain candidates, Republican candidates running for office, whether it was state senator or delegate. So I was more like local. And so, we would try to help with passing out literature, stuff like that. And I thought it was important because I could see, the people in office do not do a good job here in Maryland. And so that was kind of where I was, but that's a volunteer position. You don't get paid to be on Central Committee. And that's how I felt it should be, right? We help and we volunteer our time. And I was, because of that, I was doing some of the media stuff, here and there. I was on the Roland Martin show, arguing people back and forth. But, beyond that, it wasn't really anything else. I never thought I was going to run for office, that's for sure.
So when it comes to Baltimore, and really, a lot of other cities of that type, we always hear about Chicago, LA, DC, we always say, it's because Democrats won those cities, and I believe that. But what specifically are they doing? Because they, like you said, they get all this money and people can't even pick up trash. And there's no can't, they won't, obviously. If Scott Presler has to go down there and lead a drive to pick up trash, then, the government isn't doing their job. But what's going on here? What are they specifically doing to keep parts of Baltimore in those conditions?
Well, I think it's intentional, right? I think there are certain areas where they want people to be dependent on the government. And I think they do that because, like I said, they can leverage the urban struggle to get grant money, right? So a congressman here in Baltimore knows that if he goes down to Capitol Hill and says, we have a poor housing situation, we need HUD to come to town, we have a situation where kids are not being educated, we have a poverty situation, they know they can leverage these struggles and federal grants will be written for them to be able to rectify the situation. Unfortunately, they don't actually rectify the situation, right? That money never hits the ground. So they keep, leveraging this every single year. But at the end of the day, they're getting money in their pockets. They're hiring their friends to do the contract work or be part of the nonprofits that work on it. And basically, it's just them and their friends getting paid for this, but they don't actually do the work. And so the people on the ground that want this assistance, that wants this help, they're watching as they're told that this grant is coming through the pipeline, but they never actually see any results. And so I would say West Baltimore is a good example. We had the riots in 2015 because of the death of Freddie Gray. Now, people can say whether it was police brutality, whatever they want to say about it, that's your opinion. Obviously something happened, right? He died in police custody. But at the end of the day, there were millions of dollars sent to that Penn North corridor. And unfortunately, you're looking at it in 2022, that money still hasn't hit the ground, but they're saying the money is gone. How could that be? And so that is what they do, I think, time and time again. And when those people are getting this funding, when it comes down to the election cycle, they continue to help their friends get elected because they know there's going to be more grant money coming through. And so that's what happens, I think, time and time again.
Yeah, and I've heard similar things from, because I've spoken with other people who have ran at the local level in Baltimore. They tell me a lot of the same thing. And, I always put on my tinfoil hat. I'm like, I do think it's on purpose. It's just, if you're trying the same thing for 10, 20, 30, 40, 60, 70 years, and you see that it's getting you the exact same results, at a certain point, you are doing it on purpose. And I don't think this applies to every Democratic politician. I think a lot of them do think that what they're going to do is going to help. But at a certain point, it's very hard for me to say, yeah, this is just incompetence. No, this is you doing this according to plan. Now, I think one of the reasons they get away with it is because they know they have no competition. They know that nobody's going to run against them. It's just going to be Democrat, Democrat, Democrat. Yeah. You can choose between this Democrat or that Democrat or whatever other Democrat that you want, as long as they're Democrats. So to me, it is encouraging to see Republicans running at whether it's at the federal level or state level or local level. But now I'm going to get into the GOP. You didn't receive a lot of support. And what you told me is what I've heard from Black Republicans running in these districts all across the country. Some do receive some support from their local GOP, but not a whole lot.
Yeah.
The excuse is always, we don't want to invest resources in unwinnable races. And I understand you have to be careful with the resources that you have, but the Republican Party gets a lot of money. And it vexes me why they have such a short-term viewpoint towards this. I mean, what are some of the things that you heard when you tried to get help from the RNC?
Yeah, so it was interesting because at the end of the day, it was really just President Trump that really supported our run. When we started making waves because of the viral campaign ad, of course, we were on Fox News talking about it a lot. I remember one night I was on with Laura Ingraham, and she was asking me if I was getting support from the RNC. And I said, we've been trying to reach them, but we haven't gotten any support. I try to say it as diplomatic as possible, right? Not trying to sound bitter. And she said, well, that's just unacceptable. She said, you should be speaking at the RNC convention. And the RNC convention at that point was about maybe a week and a half away. And right. I said, well, we'll see what happens. And literally, I get off air. I was still at the studio. And I get a phone call. And basically, it was President Trump calling an assistant to Charlie Kirk from Air Force One. And he was watching Laura Ingraham. And he said, I need Kim Klacik at the RNC convention ASAP. Now, it didn't end just there, Jeff. I got this message and I was like, all right, we'll be there. I will make sure we're there. And it went back and forth for about a week. And so the RNC, Ronna McDaniel, the chairwoman, she said that it is not appropriate to have Kim Klacik at the RNC convention because a viral campaign ad is not enough to speak at the RNC convention. And I said, all right, whatever. So, we were told we weren't going to speak. Literally the day before the convention, we get another call, and Charlie Kirk was like, look, Kim, I spoke to President Trump again. You are going to be at the RNC convention. And I said, well, let me know what's going on, right? This is a big deal. And so finally, I would say probably within 16 hours, we found out that we were absolutely speaking at the RNC convention. Ours was pre-recorded in a warehouse in West Baltimore. And I actually had people helping writing the speech, people from Baltimore City that wanted to input on what's going on. I mean, it was a big occasion, and I'm so grateful for my team and everybody. We did not sleep at all. I delivered the speech. I still think today is the best speech I've ever given because I called out the Democrats, but I also called out the Republicans, saying, "Look, you can't say that Black people are brainwashed or on some plantation if you see that a Republican isn't on the ballot." So, in these cities, you have Democrats that are running for office, but if you don't give them an option in the Republican Party, they're not brainwashed, right? They can't vote for what's not there. And so that was my big thing. And I'm like, look, when I went to go knock on doors in Baltimore City and I would say, what can I do to get you to vote for a Republican? They would all say, you're the first Republican I've ever met.
Yep.
And because we're not there, Jeff, and I know you know this. And so I said, look, we've got to change that. But again, I got so much backlash. And, you just kind of look at it and say, look, so 10 years from now, maybe it'll be different. But right now, people are saying, Kim, how dare you exhaust resources on a race where it's a D+30 district because we could have used this money and resources somewhere else. Jeff, you know what I say about that?
I want to hear it.
I did not hold a gun to any donor's head. If they wanted to donate to a different candidate, they could have. They donated to our race because they felt very strongly about our race. And we can't do anything about that.
No. So, I mean, you're right. You didn't put a gun in anybody's head. You ran. So it's basically like they're saying you should not have even run because the reason they gave to you is because you ran. You had that campaign ad and it did well and people wanted to give to you. But I mean, because I've seen some of the backlash that you got, but it sounds like you got even more than I thought. I mean, are these coming from movers and shakers or whatever? I don't want to talk about she who must not be named unless you want to. But other than her, I mean, were there others?
Yeah. So unfortunately, now you have people like McCarthy, those that are going around and speaking at different events. That even though he supported me during my run, now that the narrative and the talking point is do not donate to people like Kim Klacik in a district that cannot be won. And so it's really sad because, like I said, no one's saying this to Stacey Abrams. No one's saying this to Beto O'Rourke or any other people that are running in districts that are tough to win. They're encouraging them to try to take over these districts. And that's what we should be doing as well. But for them, I think it's hard work, so they won't want to do it. The interesting part about this, even though I raised over $8 million, like I said, a lot of it was through Win Red. And so the RNC was getting a large percentage of what I raised. And so they made out very well on my race. And they made out very well because of President Trump, right? They made millions of dollars because everybody wanted to donate to President Trump. And a lot of people did that through Win Red. And so when you do that, the RNC gets a percentage. But I do believe, and we saw this, at the end of the election cycle, even though President Trump was like, hey, I don't think things were fair, whether people thought it was or not, the RNC didn't have his back at that point, right? They kind of were like, oh, I don't know. You saw that even with the Senate Georgia runoff race. They were kind of like trying to make their distance from him at that point in time. But he raised them millions of dollars. I would say probably close to $200 million. And it's just so crazy to me that they would just turn their back on individuals that really supported their party through the entire thing. Because there's a lot of people now that are not excited about the establishment. But the establishment is making money off of the new, fresh faces.
They sure are. So let me ask this, and again, I know there's a lot you can't talk about, but did most of the backlash come after that whole thing with
Candace?
Who shall not be named, or before?
So Candace Owens, unfortunately, I think so from what I hear, she was always very upset at the fact that I spoke at the RNC convention and she did not. And from what I hear, she thought that I took her place. And so it was very hard for her because remember, it was Charlie Kirk pushing for me to speak, and that's her guy, right? But I don't think
I'm holding back so much right now. I want to be petty so bad, but I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it.
No, I don't think Charlie did it intentionally. I think he saw that we had a campaign ad. Oh no, hold on. He saw that we had a good campaign ad, and so he knew that President Trump liked our campaign ad. Mm-hmm. And so Charlie Kirk is a businessman, right? Sure. So he looked at it as like, look, President Trump and I are good friends. We know that he supports Kim Klacik. So let's see what we can do to make sure Kim Klacik raises her profile. And perhaps because he endorsed her, let's see if we can make sure she wins. I think that's what Charlie was thinking.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we were the ones that spoke at the RNC convention. Now, if you look at the video, and I'm so flattered, Jeff, she made a 44-minute video about me. But I will say that, when she was making the video, she did mention the RNC convention. And I thought that was interesting because it was so long ago. I don't even think about it, right? But I think that really upset her. And it did upset other people, not just her. And remember, Ronna McDaniel and other people with the RNC did not want me there. I wasn't part of the crew. And so, when they're giving out talking points and people are making media appearances, which I did all through my campaign,
sure,
I wasn't using their talking points, right? I would get the emails, but I would just be like, delete. I'm like, I'm going to say what I want to say.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so when you're your own person and you're running in a district that's tough to win, I think they see you as big competition. And they don't want that kind of competition in the Republican Party, especially from a minority.
Yeah. Okay, I wasn't going to say it, but I'm going to say it. See, what's going on here is that these people, they've controlled the messaging for so long. They have a messaging that they like, even though it doesn't work and it's been proven not to work. And they don't want to, this is what we call gatekeeping. They don't want other voices out there saying something different. They don't want their messaging criticized. But guess what? Just like with the Democrats, what I say about them, if you've been doing it for 50, 60 years and it ain't working, you got to change course, or people are going to assume that you're doing it on purpose. So I'm not for eliminating voices. I want to add more on, and then let the base choose what messaging that they want to go with. I wish we had more people who would delete those emails, because if it's not you, then people are going to see that. If it's not authentic, people are going to smell that BS. So the whole thing, honestly, the whole thing was really silly. I think that the way people were treating you was way unfair. And it just reflects a lack of critical thought, in my opinion. Yes, we should be looking at short-term victories, but we also need to be thinking about the long term. The demographics are changing. And you know what? I'm seeing people starting to see it now, like just recently. So I'm cautiously optimistic, and I put the word cautiously in all caps. And I don't know if you're seeing this too. That's what I want to know. But I'm seeing that some minds are starting to change. I'm seeing that they're starting to put certain centers in certain cities designed to attract minority voters. Hopefully that's real. But what do you think? Are minds changing, or do you think people are still stuck in the old way of thinking?
Yeah, no, I think minds are changing. I did see where Ronna McDaniel and others are now embracing the LGBTQ community, right? They're now starting to try to be that big tent party. And with that, they're like, Hispanics, Blacks, right, Asians. They're trying to do the whole identity block thing, as the Democrats do, to try to combat, that narrative. But at the end of the day, it's kind of like, look, you can be your own party, and you can be big tent, but you don't have to actually, identify with these identity blocks. You could just be like, look, this is where we all are as a country, and here's where we are all moving. And I think a lot of people will respect that. I don't think people realize this. And I kind of say it here and there, but I don't. But many Black Americans, especially those that are my senior, a lot of those do not appreciate this push when it comes to the LGBTQ community. And I don't know if you see it, but like my seniors, my elders do not appreciate it. And they don't appreciate that it's kind of being basically put in line with the Black community. you know, 'cause so there's a lot of people that are now kind of looking at this like, wait a minute, we have been waiting for a very long time for, you know, what we have on our agenda. And now it's kind of like we're at, you know, even, you know, pace here. And there are a lot of people not appreciating that. And I think what Republicans should have done, and they can still do this, is just treat everybody equally. Just say equally, we support the Constitution, we support everybody, and here's how we're going to move forward. But I think they're so busy trying to be on the offense, right? They're always they're always on the defense, right? So whenever the left says one thing, then they feel like they have to combat that message or that narrative. They never just take control and say, here's my narrative, here's where I'm going with it, and whoever's with me is with me, whoever's not is not. And for some reason, the Republican Party doesn't have that kind of backbone. But I think if they do embrace more minorities, more Republican minorities, and allow us to have that voice, because for me, and I know for you, Jeff, I mean, for me, I'm like, look, I've been calling every name in the book. Okay, there's nothing you can say to me about me that's gonna stop me, right? And so for me, I'm like, look, just give me the ball and I'm there. Right? And so I think there's many of us that says, look, if you support me, I will be there front and center and I will continue to support your message. But for some reason, we just do not get that same support. And I do think you're right. I think there are more people kind of waking up to what's going on, and that Democrats are still just, you know, doing their same old games. But the Republican Party, I don't think we're in a position to take advantage of those people waking up. Because I said before, when President Trump knocked the door, like he literally kicked the door open on Baltimore City, that was the time for the Republican Party to descend on Baltimore City. They didn't do it. They just still stood in the background. And I'm like, hello, anybody, we need some help. You know, but nobody stepped forward. It was really crazy to me. But you know what? I know a lot of people do not still, you know, they say a lot about me because, you know, Candace said about me, whatever. But President Trump still supports me. And guess what? Our defamation lawsuit is still in progress.
Yes, it is. And I want to ask all kinds of questions about it, but I know I can't, so I won't. But I want to talk more about the idea of going on the offense. But before we get into that, just want to remind you guys, don't forget to head on over to LibertyNation.com, a proud sponsor of A Fresh Perspective with Jeff Charles. You can check out the latest cutting-edge conservative news and analysis with none of the spin and every single bit of the nuance. You're not going to get the usual spin, you know, the regurgitation of talking points that you're used to seeing. You're going to get in-depth analysis by awesome writers, myself included, at LibertyNation.com. So definitely check out LibertyNation.com, where truth is making a comeback. Now, I recently wrote an article specifically about this whole thing over the Florida Parental Rights and Education Bill. And what I was saying was making me mad, because I always see this in every aspect, but I want to apply it to what we're talking about. And I said the exact same thing you said. Stop playing defense, go on the offense. Make them defend. Like in this specific example, I said, don't talk about how it's not the Don't Say Gay bill. I mean, yeah, say that, get the record straight, but no, make them explain why they want grown teachers talking to kids that are 7 years old and younger about sexual topics. Make them do the explaining. We don't have to explain. Make them explain why. But when it comes to this issue, when it comes to as far as how the GOP has approached getting Black and brown voters, you just said it. I mean, Trump put the spotlight on Baltimore. You put the spotlight on Baltimore, and the establishment did what it always does. It stayed back and didn't do anything. How should we? Well, first off, here's the first question I want to ask. Like I said, I think things are starting to change. They're not changing fast enough for me. How do we change the minds on the right to be able to get them to see the importance of going after a wider swath of voters?
Yeah, it's tough, you know. And again, I will say that I don't think the Republican Party is used to putting in that work, right? They're not the grassroots party. I think the Democrats have always been very organized. I think they've been, you know, that on the grassroots party for a long time. Unfortunately, Republicans have to make a change, right? And I think they're very unwilling to make that change. Or they feel like, oh, people should just join us. We don't have to make that change. And it's kind of like, well, no, you do. And so right now we're kind of split in the Republican Party. I don't know if you noticed, but we've got the Bible Belt conservatives versus the Republicans that kind of just want to make sure that they can get the message out, help people understand, like, make America great again, and all that stuff. Help people understand, look, we're supporting the Constitution. But we do have the Bible Belt conservatives that are like, well, God wouldn't agree with this, God wouldn't agree with that. And I'm fine with that. I understand how the Bible works. I get it. But at the end of the day, when you're trying to conserve the conservative movement, there'll be nothing left to conserve if you allow everybody to just leave the party or not vote for the party because they feel that you are old school. And I think, unfortunately, people do feel the Republican Party is old school. We're not a party made up of old white men, but when you're looking at the talking points, when you're looking at what we're pushing for, it's hard to see that we are not but for something that might have been, back in the 1960s. Because we have to be able to move the message forward. And like you said, in Florida, the so-called Don't Say Gay bill, that was a perfect example for people to come out. And I thought Governor Ron DeSantis did a great job.
He did.
He said, look, here are the facts, stop spreading misinformation. Here's the facts. But the Republican Party, if you notice, the RNC, they didn't come in and support him. They weren't there to back him up immediately. And it's like, look, you can't manage the party from Fox News, right? You've got to do more work than that. And I think that's the thing. I think we're not used to putting in the work or the effort. And that's what holds us back.
And I would even say that they're only used to putting in the work where they feel comfortable putting in the work. I think they don't want to step outside of their comfort zone.
Right.
Because it is uncomfortable. But I think I'm seeing more people realize that it ain't going to work long term. Like, we have to change the way we're doing things. Otherwise, we're going to be irrelevant. We're not going to get anywhere by excluding people. Like, we got to be known more for what we're for than what we're against. I was talking to Pastor Daryl Scott about this too. Same thing. Like, people always, they know what we're against because we make that very clear. But when it comes to, like, even the upcoming midterm elections, which I want to talk about in a second, it's not just about bashing the other side. Yeah, we need to call out what the Democrats are doing, but if we're not the alternative, then we're not going to get the support. And this is especially true of minority communities. And we have an opportunity because more minorities are leaving the Democratic Party. This is not this huge, mass exodus from the Democratic Party yet, but little by little it's happening, but we need to capitalize on it. So what would you say? But here's what I wanted to talk about. Since the RNC isn't really doing it yet, your PAC is, and groups like that. So what kind of response are you getting when you're saying, we want to run in these districts and this is what we're getting funding for? What's the response been? Has it been more backlash than support, or more support than backlash?
I think it's kind of even, right? We have some candidates that have been working grassroots style in their communities for a long time. Like I mentioned, Billy Prempe, Darius Mayfield, they're in New Jersey. Like you said, Julie in New Hampshire. We have some great candidates that are on the ground every single day. Dario Badillo, he's running for Baltimore County Executive here in Maryland. And so I think that there are a lot of people that understand, look, we want to run in our own communities. We are more conservative than we are liberal, even though some people say, oh, well, how conservative can they be, right? They're in the Black community. The Black community's been voting this way and so on. So we do get that kind of backlash. But, we kind of just shake it off and keep going. And hopefully we'll soon have the endorsement from President Trump for the PAC Red Renaissance and all the candidates that are included. People ask me, like, why are you always at Mar-a-Lago? Why are you here? Why are you there? Because, look, at the end of the day, President Trump's endorsement does mean a lot. And so we're going to continue to try to get that. All of our candidates are actually pro-Trump. When he put out his platinum plan, there were a lot of us looking at that plan saying, this is exactly what we need in the Black community. So we were excited about that. So we, we'll continue to support him, and I think he does support us. He's supporting people like Vernon Jones and others. But the RNC is going to have to eventually wake up, right? If they don't wake up soon, I think they're going to get a wake-up call. And now that we look at what's going on, the political landscape, sure, I do think there's going to be a red wave in November. But at the end of the day, look how the Democrats are controlling the media, right? We're talking a lot about Ukraine. We're talking about a lot about other things other than the election. And that's exactly what they want. Meanwhile, the Republican Party should be combating this. And we can still talk about Ukraine, right? We can still talk about the war. We should also be talking about the midterm elections. And you know what, Jeff? I haven't seen that.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, they're letting the Democrats distract from it. And, it is important, but still our elections are important too, right? Yeah. Especially since, with the Republican, here's what I'm afraid of, Kim, when it comes to the midterm elections. I mean, Republicans are going to win. They're going to at least win the House, probably even the Senate. That's possible too. I'm afraid of that happening and then just nothing changing. Now, I know that because Biden's in the White House, I mean, they're going to have that resistance there. But we've seen this happen time and time again. All these Republicans come out and say, hey, if you elect us, or if you get us control of Congress, we'll do all this crap for you. It's going to be perfect. And then they get in and they sit on their hands, or they maybe do something here and there. I mean, remember when Trump was in office, they had both chambers of Congress. They did nothing on health care. It shouldn't have been to where John McCain would have been able to destroy the whole thing just with a thumbs down. They should have already had a plan, and they didn't. Mainly because I don't think they thought they were going to win, but also because I don't think they ever intended to do it in the first place. So I'm afraid of that happening again, because we don't pay attention during primary season, and we're not really willing to do what it takes to hold people accountable. So what do you think of that whole thing? I mean, do you think that's a danger, or are you seeing something different out there? Because you're more out there than I am. So are you seeing something different?
No, it's pretty much the same thing. I do think we got a lot of good rookies on Capitol Hill in 2020. I think Congressman Byron Donalds, Congressman Burns Owens, you got Madison Cawthorn, you got Lauren Boebert. You got a lot of people with strong voices. I think in the past, the Republican Party doesn't like to ruffle feathers, right? Because that's not the conservative thing to do. But I think once they get out of their own way and understand that this is a fight, you're in a fight, whether they want to be in it or not. This is a fight, and they have to go forward a little bit stronger than that. But I think, you know what, maybe now they'll finally get it. I think, we do need to get a new chairperson. I don't think Ronna McDaniel is what we need. I think she's extremely moderate, very reserved, and I think we need someone that's a bit more outspoken, that's ready to really get out there. I know Scott Pressler, like you said earlier, he's been registering voters. From what I hear, that he wants to run for chairperson. I think that would be great. He's somebody that wants to push the party forward. I don't think he's scared of getting in an argument and being loud, you know what I mean, and being that person. But whatever we need to do, I think we do need new leadership within the Republican Party.
Yes.
I saw recently Matt Schlapp, with CPAC, was actually saying that we should have compassion for Leah Thomas, the trans swimmer at University of Pennsylvania. I don't understand why we need to have compassion for Leah Thomas competing against biological women. Makes no sense. But you know what? We've had a lot of weak people, I think, running the Republican Party, and we need to change that.
I agree. I mean, I asked earlier what people like us need to do to get the Republican Party on a new track. I do think that we need new leadership. I mean, the time for the old establishment or the old way of doing things is over. I mean, and we are in a civil war right now in the Republican Party. And I'm liking it because it means that people recognize that we need change. And we do need people who are a little bit more pugilistic. We need more people who are willing to take the fight to the left and to actually fight for what we say we believe in. And dare I say, we need people in there who are a little bit more Trumpy. I mean, I'd like to see people who are Trumpy without the flaws, like a DeSantis, but whatever. I mean, even with some of those flaws, I'd rather have that than what we have now, because what we have now is what we've always had, and that's not done anything. So I'm really hoping to get more people in leadership in the RNC that are willing to actually move things forward. Do you see anything? Do you see anything promising on that front? Because I haven't yet.
Yeah, well, and I hope my phone doesn't die, Jeff.
Okay.
But I do have some hope. Like I said, I think social media has helped the Republican Party. I think now we do see a lot more people within the Republican Party willing to speak out. And then I just hope that people understand that these are the people I think that we should look to, like yourself, Jeff, right? Like Keisha King, like those that are not afraid to step up and speak on our behalf and letting people know, look, there are a lot of Black people out here. And believe it or not, we grew up in the church, okay? Mm-hmm. We are also very conservative, right? And many of us do vote Republican. Many of us want to make that change, even if they are still in the Democrat Party. We just have to embrace them and speak to them. Saying things like, you're on a plantation, that ain't gonna work, okay? That ain't gonna work. Nope. If you want to persuade somebody for their vote, you have to talk to them like they're a human being. Do not be condescending, and help them understand what this party stands for. Because a lot of people in Black communities, as you know, they have been told that the Republican parties are old, white, racist people. Yep. And so we have to make sure they understand that's not the case. And you're not going to do that by speaking racist talking points, like talking about a plantation. So, I hope we get past that. But I think some people don't get it. I don't think some people get it. And they eat it up and they buy into it. But at the end of the day, if you have real people that are on the ground in these communities and you listen to those individuals, that's where you'll get the message and the messaging that you have to push out there. I just say to people, look, if you're looking at someone and they've never been to the south side of Chicago, they've never been to Philly, they've never been to Baltimore City, they've never been to any urban community, you can see this on their own social media pages. Please know that they might not know what the messaging is. And that's fine, right? Everybody has their place. Yeah. Everybody has their lane. But I just say, look, just understand that there are more voices out there and you just have to listen to them. And I think that's how we can continue to build. I look at right now the RNC, the Black outreach person, the top dog is Paris Denard. Mm-hmm. I think Paris is a great guy, but I never see Paris in the Black community. So how can he be the outreach person for the Black community if he's not in the Black community, right? We need to be honest with this conversation and actually recruit people that are in these communities. I like King Randall. I like people that are out there doing the work and talking to people in these communities. Those are the people we should be really attaching ourselves to, because they're the ones that are going to spread the message.
Yeah, I agree. Like King Randall, Jalen Johnson, people like them. I agree with you wholeheartedly. I mean, and what we're talking about with the weak leadership, that's not just at the national level. I'm glad that you brought that up. I mean, it's also at the state and local level. I mean, speaking of Keisha, I hear from her all the time about these rhinos and the Jacksonville GOP. And I'm like, yeah, this is everywhere. We need a total overhaul. We need people who are in leadership positions who are tough and also smart enough to understand that we need the right messaging. So, but yeah, I don't want your phone to die, so I know that that's coming. But why don't you tell everybody where they can find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter at Kim K Baltimore, and then on Instagram and Facebook, it's Kimberly Klacik. Red Renaissance, we have an Instagram and a Twitter and a Facebook, actually. And then redrenaissance.com, you'll see all the candidates that we support. We do say that you should donate directly to the candidates. Like, we do our own fundraising, so don't worry about us. Worry about the candidates because they're the ones that really need the support. Like I know, Jeff, it is hard to raise money, especially when you don't have a raised profile. And there are a lot of people that are out there doing the work every single day, knocking on doors every single day. You might just not see them because they're not getting a ton of spotlight, but they're out there.
Gotcha. Great. Well, thanks for joining us. And hopefully further down the road, as we get closer to midterms, we can talk again.
Yes. Thank you. I appreciate it.